Welcome back to the No BS Human Design podcast. I have something so special for you today. I am actually sharing with you the business coach who changed my life. Like, she rocked my world when it came to actually owning a business. And I had to share her with you because of the connection that I felt with her as a coach, and to teach you how you can work with someone who is actually like your ideal mentor, who sees into your soul, who sees what you're here to do when you follow your strategy and authority. So, Sarah Walton is a business coach and sales expert. She's been featured on the Today Show and a bunch of really freaking epic places. And I met her through a previous mastermind that I was in. What's interesting is, like, she was kind of in the mastermind, but she was also dealing with a lot of her own stuff personally. So she wasn't showing up as much. And I didn't really know her in the mastermind. But then after that mastermind, when I started talking to my network, remember, I'm a line 4, about looking for a new business coach who was really going to help me catalyze the energy I had around abundance and the frequency of money and everything sales. Everyone kept saying, well, don't you remember Sarah from the mastermind? And talk to Sarah and talk to this. And I was like, okay. So I took my time. I have an emotional authority. So I spoke with a lot of different coaches. It took 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. I really took my time before making the investment. And meeting Sarah, actually having a conversation with her one-on-one, felt so grounding. We had so much in common from our childhood. So I knew that she could see into my soul in a way that not many people could. She knew a lot of what I had gone through. And everything about my emotional authority was just like, yes, she is the person. And I worked with her for a year, all of 2023. And my life has changed. She really helped me. I mean, you hear a lot about it in this conversation, but she really helped me stop making myself so small, because she saw my soul. She saw what I was here to do. She saw my bigness. She saw the impact I was here to make. And she taught me money in a way that I had never really seen money, abundance in a way that I had never seen abundance. And I'm bringing her on the podcast, one, to talk about that abundance and how you can literally change your perspective, which then changes your frequency, which then changes your income, right? And the resources, even not just money, but the resources that can come to you easily when you have that frequency, when you're on that same energetic level. But also, I wanted to show you what the dynamic looks like when you have a client and a coach who are so meant for each other, who were so deeply meant for each other, because we've all made investments in coaching. I'm sure if you're listening, you've probably had your share of investments with either a coaching program or our coach, where it was just like, of course we learned something, but it wasn't totally aligned. And I want you to see what's possible when you do work with someone who sees like into your soul, who is like a soul sister or mother or father for you, because that's what I feel. I feel so divinely held by her in our sessions. And I just want you to understand that, like, if you are in a situation where you're afraid to invest again, you're afraid to work with another coach, maybe you had kind of had the shit end of the stick in a previous program or whatever that is, I want you to see what's possible and the growth that you can have from finding that person who launches you forward, because you've used your authority in finding that person, and because everything in your body told you, yes, this is right, this is grounded, this is safe. So Sarah is here to talk about all things abundance, and you get to just hear and feel our connection and the way that she's transformed my life. And you'll hear the actual like financial changes that I went through last year, and how working with her literally changed the game of my business when it comes to money and abundance and sales and all of that. So this is a really special conversation for you guys to listen in on. I love her with all of my heart and soul, and I know that you are going to love her too. Of course, all of her links and her information will be in the show notes below, so just check that out. And let's see, what am I doing right now? So 1 week from today, I will be on my ruck. So I'll be 100 miles in the woods for 4 days doing the charity event. The fundraising link is still in the show notes below. If you would like to donate to Wymie and Sherry's house, 100% of the proceeds go to this foundation. And we typically raise around $100,000, which actually supports all of the employee's salary from Wymie and Sherry's house for the whole year. So it's a really big fundraiser for them. And if you feel called to donate, absolutely, please do. If you feel just called to share, please do. Everything makes a change in these families' lives. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you next week. Welcome to the No BS Human Design Podcast. I'm Adriana Keefe, human design coach and motivational speaker. I went through my quarter life crisis in my 20s and had to learn how to navigate through finding what I was meant to be doing with my life. I refused to believe in the culture that said we were all meant to have the same path and boring careers until we retire and die. And along my journey, I found human design, a system that reveals your energetic blueprint, showing you where and how to access your body's consciousness and how to live as your true self. Human design changed my life, so I started sharing it with others and changing their lives, but we were all finding the same problem: a lack of resources that explain the system in easy and useful ways. So I created this show where we dive deep into the lessons of the human design system without the BS and the noise you find on the internet. Listen in for lessons in human design, finding your purpose, manifestation and spiritual practices, human design within business, and so much more. We connect with other experts in the human design and spiritual realm in a refreshingly honest way to help you find your way along your spiritual path and live this life with intention. It's time to let go of the societal expectations of being and let yourself find abundance through being uniquely you. Let's get started. Okay, I am incredibly stoked for this conversation. I feel like I say that a lot, but like extra stoked for this conversation. One, because I haven't talked to you in a hot minute. And two, because people are officially like really getting to meet the person behind like this wonderful face that we're just kidding.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh my goodness. Welcome, Sarah Walton. Thank you so much for being here. I'd love for you to take a moment and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here because, you know, when you work with people, right, you get to like see the inner workings of their business and what holds them back and where they can expand, but you get to like know this really cool side of them. And then it's a whole other thing to see them inside their business, which is what I feel like I get to do right now, which is so cool. I'm so excited. Anyway, so my name is Sarah Walton. I'm a business coach and my specialty is abundance and sales. I just really love specifically for women to teach the skills and the mindset work that goes around true business success, because women are so good at business. We're really, really good at it. And the issue tends to be this patriarchal, it's all skills. You have to know all this stuff. And it's like, sure, you need a strategy. You have to know those skills, but it's 80% mindset. That is only 20% of the game. And you can pick up any skill on the interwebs at any moment, at any time, right? It's like we have our weapons of mass distraction we all carry in our pockets all day. We have anything on YouTube. You can look up how to do anything. But if you do that with a mindset of, I'm stupid, I'm not good enough, this isn't going to work for me, everybody else has this figured out but me, oh my gosh, I'm behind the curve. I think money's bad. I don't think I really deserve this. You go about working that way, which so many people do. It doesn't matter what the strategy is. It's not going to work. And so that's really where my sweet spot is. I'll teach you any strategy you want, but the sweet spot's in the 80%.
Yes. And as you're saying that, I didn't actually put together the fact that when I started working with you, it was because I had already invested in like the strategy coaching and all of that, and it served a purpose.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a financial ROI, but I see why I did some of the things I did, because that's how I met you, was through one of those containers. And then you were offering this thing that was like, it's not really strategy that you need, it's this. And I was just like, okay, let's try it. And that was literally the catalyst for everything else. Like, who would have thought? Not me. Everyone online was telling me, watch, do this strategy, do that, blah, blah, blah. And I did it without the results I wanted. So it's just anyone who's new to business,
I want you to just really take that in. It's not really the strategy that you need right now. It's the Sarah Walton. Um, and so we just looked up your human design chart because we both already forgot. And you are a 5-1 sacral manifesting generator. And I love that this might not mean much to you if you don't know much about human design, but I love that you have an open solar plexus because that's where we house emotions and moods. And you truly held that space for me, where I have a definition there. I have a strong emotional wave, and you really held that space for me. Like I still call you coach, even though it's been like 6 months since we stopped working together. Because I feel like you held space for me like no other coach ever had. Like you truly saw me and made me feel like a sister. Like I feel like you're my big sister. I'm like, can I come for Thanksgiving? Can I like, all right, I'm gonna hit you up in the fall.
Come on over. Yeah. Oh, that
Yeah,
means so
I
much.
love
You made me
seeing that.
cry. Yeah.
Oh, stop it. And you are an Aries. Do you know your other astrological moon and rising or no?
I want to say I'm Scorpio moon. I don't
Oh
know if I
yeah,
have
right.
that
Because
right. Is that
we were
right?
both Scorpio moon and Leo rising. Weren't you
Yes,
also
that's what
Leo
it is.
rising?
Yes,
That's right. We both had that. I forgot. And the
that's
gifts of a
right.
Leo rising is really shining the light on other people, like helping
Mm.
other people rise into the light. So you did that for me, and now I'm doing that for other people. Oh, I
I
love
love
that
it.
so
I
much.
love it. Come on.
Woo!
That's what it's
I
all
know.
about right there.
I
Yeah.
know. So tell us a little bit about like how you got into this whole abundance
Mhm.
mindset coaching, especially around business,
Yeah.
because you're teaching sales, but it's
Mhm.
like totally different than what people would think.
Yeah. I mean, I have a bias, I guess is maybe the best way to say it, or maybe I have a truth telling urge around sales and even this business strategy stuff that's out there because it's so fear-based. I mean, here are all these gorgeous, heart-centered, amazing humans launching businesses, and it's so scary, right? Like, let's tell the truth about that. Like, it takes so much courage. You have all these gorgeous ideas, and then it's like, I want to create all the ideas. And then you're like, oh, I got to sell these. And the fear that comes with that, you start thinking of the used car salesman, you start thinking about the times you got pressured to buy something that didn't work. And you're like, I don't want to be like that. And I personally felt that. I mean, I left this bazillion-dollar a year career with the glass office and all the things,
Yeah.
and I was terrified. And I was in a marriage where I felt unbelievable financial pressure because I'd been the breadwinner for so long. And I just, like, the pressure cooker that created, um, I think really showed me I needed someone like me at that time. And I sort of started to feel at the time, I remember listening to The Power of Now with Eckhart Tolle. And I was like, I don't want anyone in my space going through this. This is made up. This is BS. There is enough. And just sort of starting to step into that space. And I'd already done a boatload of like personal development work, but there was something about that where I was like, this is a lie. And I just started to fight for that. And that's what I mean. Like, I have this like fight for this. Like, this is BS. This is patriarchal residue. This isn't real. We can make money helping people. And I just got this overwhelming pull to teach it, to teach the idea that you should make a lot of money. Because when women have money, we do amazing things. We've seen what happens when the patriarchy has all the money, and it's not great, right? That's not to dig on men, but look at the state of the world. It's not great. And I'm really out to turn that tide. And I think the best, fastest, most beautiful and exciting way to do that is to put more money in the hands of more women. So that's
I
really
love
why I
that.
teach this. Yeah.
That's that Aries fire coming through. You're like,
It
no,
is.
we starting something new here.
I'm like, no. Yeah. Like,
No,
no, no, no.
done. I love it so much. And I wish I remembered what was going through my head when I talked to you. Oh no, that was when I was really putting my emotional authority, my decision making to the test. And I interviewed like 4 or 5 coaches. I was like, who do I want to work with next? Who feels right? And just being in your aura, you just were just like women and money and let's have fun and let's like love on each other. And but you weren't doing it in like a super like woo woo earthy crunchy too much for me way. It was very grounded. And I was like, ooh, I dig this. And you really taught me what abundance is. I still walk into a grocery store and look at the apples and think about the apple. You want to explain that for a minute?
I would love to. I'm like, people are like, apples. What? No,
Oh
it's
my God.
just the amount of abundance we live in all the time that we don't pay attention to. And I think if you want to go non-woo-woo and let's go science-based, right? So we all know about the reticular activating system. They call it the RAS, but it's the part of our brain that's cutting out all the things we don't need to pay attention to. And at a very young age, because scarcity is so huge in our day-to-day conversations, that system learns to turn off abundance. It just doesn't see it. And so one of the things I love to do is walk into a grocery store, it can make me cry. I'm going to like well up, but take a second and look at the fruit section. It's insane. Like we walk through and we pick up 15 different, oh, not that one. Oh, not that one. And there's 85 different, species of apples that you can choose from. Meanwhile, somebody had to plant that tree, water that tree. The sunlight had to work properly. They had to make sure that no worms were involved, but they had to try to keep it organic because those pesticides aren't great for us, right? Someone had to pick them, carry them in a basket so they don't get bruised, right? Like pack them up in a truck that carried it God knows how far for you to walk into a grocery store and go, I don't feel like pink ladies today. It's like, oh my God, and that's not to say we don't get to choose. Of course we do.
So
That's
true.
beautiful. But it's like, are you effing kidding me? The amount of abundance we live in every single day. Walk into your grocery store and pay attention, or go turn the tap on in your kitchen and it's automatically warm or hot to clean your dishes properly and you didn't do anything.
Yep.
That's abundance, right? There are people in this world who walk miles a day to get water. And that's not to make us feel bad. We're all born where we're born and we all have every right to look around where we are and decide what's working for us and what's not. But to do that without the lens towards what you already have turned on has us living in what, there were these diaries of the Native Americans as, the white Europeans started to invade, and they would talk about the insanity in the white man's eyes. That's what it was like, documented over and over.
Oof.
And they were like, we want this land. And like the Native Americans were like, this land doesn't belong to anybody. This is the earth's land, that level of abundance, right? And the scarcity took over at that time for this country. And we just kept living inside of it. And so it takes work to undo that training, turn the activating system on so that it actually starts looking for abundance instead. And the second you do that, everything starts to change because you start to see solutions. You start to see answers. You start to see people differently. You start to feel more joy and more love and more connection in ways when you're like this all day on your phone. Oh, is this line not moving? God, right? When you're in that, you can't see a solution. But when you're looking around and you're noticing, and even standing in line, you still have 85,000 different candy bars to choose from, right? Like there's always so much around us, but we've learned to ignore it. And I think the second we can flip that on, boy, it is magical.
And your relationship with abundance didn't just like come innately. You told us this story around your dance costume. I was literally just telling the story like last week, and I can't remember who I was talking to, but that story affected me so much. Would you share that with them? What happened when you were young?
Yeah. Oh, I just got chills again. Isn't that funny? This is known
It's
as my
the dance costume story.
I know,
That's
it's
what
like,
I came.
it's like
pulled
everybody knows the story, and I still cry when I tell it. And I said like, but yeah. So I was raised in, I think what some people would call kind of extreme poverty. Like I had a roof, right, and clothes, but outside of that, not much. And so when I say that, what I'm saying is, it was my mom. It was a single mom. It was me and my younger half brother at the time. And when I say we didn't have money, I mean, we're talking like half a loaf of bread and a jar of honey was in the pantry, the end. And that bread was made by my mom from scratch. And so that was kind of how I was raised. And when I was 4 or 5, I was watching the Nutcracker. PBS was having a fundraiser. I know this, I'm that old, but they used to have fundraisers and they'd show these beautiful movies and shows and specials. And one of them was the Nutcracker. And I remember looking at the ballerinas and I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I was like, Mama, I want to do that. Like, I didn't know what it was. I didn't care. That was beautiful. And we couldn't really afford dance lessons. So I learned how to dance from Janet Jackson and Paula Abdul. And those of you who again, don't know. So I could throw a chair, I could dance with cartoons, I could, Rhythm Nation was like the best, right? And what I really wanted to do at that time was be on the high school dance team. Like, that's all I wanted. I grew up in a town called Sandy, Utah. For those of you who just went, God, that sounds familiar. It's the town where Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped from. That's
Oh, Jesus.
it's also where they filmed
Mhm.
Big Love. So that was my childhood. Yes, not exactly women's rights, not exactly like huge movement forward for like making sure women were financially secure. Anyway, I digress. So I want to make this high school dance team. That's all I wanted. It really was a big deal there because there wasn't really much else that was an option for me, but I would watch these girls dance at halftime and I just absolutely loved it. And it came time for me to try out and I learned all the dance moves and I was practicing in the basement and my butt hurt and my knees hurt and I did all the things and I made the team and I was so excited. And it was a really tight knit, it was a Mormon community. So it was really tight knit and people like brought over roses. Everybody knew I'd made the team. It was so amazing. And I was so excited and proud. And then we got the letter that talked about the cost, right? So it was the jacket, it was the shoes, it was the dance costumes, it was the extra lessons, all the things. And like, Andrea, I don't know if you've ever had like the out of body experience, where you like watch yourself go through something. And that's sort
Oh,
of
yeah.
what, like, yeah. It was like my stomach dropped through the floor, my mouth went dry, my palms are sweaty because there was no way. There was just no way this was going to work. And I'm watching this dream I've had since I was 5 years old just vanish. And so what I did, I know everybody listening is like, oh, I'm shocked. I went and I was super frisky and I got a job selling crap from a kiosk in a mall. And if you're too young to know what a mall is, just think Stranger Things. Okay. So I know it doesn't happen anymore,
Yes.
but that's where we hung out, dudes.
Yes.
So there was this cart and I was selling tchotchke crap nobody needed, but it was the 80s. So who cares? Everybody was buying everything.
Yep.
And I made my first paycheck. I got my first paycheck and I went to cash that paycheck with my mom and my younger brother. We had to go to the grocery store to cash it because I didn't have a bank account. And at that time they had like service counters. Yep. I know people used to actually help people do things. There was a service counter.
Yes.
And I could go cash my check. And as we're walking in, my mom said, Sarah, the strawberries are on sale. Can we get some? Now, if you're a psychologist, your brain just exploded, but that's a different podcast. Okay. So I think of my costumes, I think of the strawberries, and I say, yes, we can do that. So she goes off with my younger brother to get the strawberries. I cash my check. I have the money in my hands to make this deposit for my costumes, right? I'm so jazzed. And I go to find my mom and my younger brother in the express checkout with the strawberries and they're not there. And I'm walking, I'm like, where did they go? I can't find them. And then I see them in line with a cart full of groceries. And it's a cart full of groceries I know my mother cannot afford to pay for. And in that cart is like my brother's favorite breakfast cereal. It's milk, it's bread, it's lunch meat for his sandwiches. The damn strawberries are there. And in that moment at 16, I knew I could pay for something I wanted my entire life at that age, or I could take care of my family, but I couldn't do both. There was no way I could do both. And in that moment, I decided I'd always have to choose between myself and my family, which is fascinating. And that went with me through my whole life. So I was the first woman in my family. I have 65 cousins. I was the first woman to graduate from college. I moved to New York City. I had this incredible career in technology. I was, running $25,000 a week in Facebook ads. I was doing all this stuff and I was effing miserable, like super skinny, sick all the time, right? Not great, not sleeping, not happy, but my family was taken care of. And there was a moment when my daughter called me and said, Mommy, I miss you because now I've got kids, right? And I'm still making all the dollars. And I could hear the clock ticking in my office, ticking away the moments of my life that I could never get back. And something popped. And that was the day I remembered the moment in the grocery store. And I was like, wait a minute, I made that decision. Well, if I made that decision, I can unmake that decision. And that really started my journey, in self-development and understanding how much power our thoughts have, which we know is true, but to experience it on that level was so powerful. And that was the day I quit. And everybody always says, but wait, Sarah, what'd you do? Did you buy the groceries or not? So I did buy the groceries. Everyone's always like, wait. So I bought the groceries and another woman in my neighborhood found out what had happened. She'd heard and she paid for my costumes. And what was so moving is in 2019, right before the pandemic hit, I held a conference in Salt Lake City and I got to bring her up on stage and thank her publicly because had she not done that and shown me what women do when they have money, what we do for other people, how we move our communities forward. And I got to thank her in public. And then she passed away in 2020. So that was just this amazing moment for me to come full circle to say this is what we do as women for each other, and to be able to pay her back for that was so special. And that just sort of cemented for me. That was 2019. So before I'd even created the Abundance Academy, that was a moment when I knew this is where I wanted to play forever, was this space where women are lifting each other up and making a ton of money, because we should be. We're so good with money. We're so smart. We're really great in business, and we do everything with heart and soul as opposed to for the sake of money. And that's what makes earning that money so rich and so beautiful and so powerful.
I don't know if I forgot or if I didn't know that you got to feature her on stage, but I'm just like, now I'm gonna cry.
Yeah,
I
no,
should have known I was gonna cry in this
I know.
one. Holy shit. What a
Yeah.
moment.
We
And
actually
also the fact that like, oh, go ahead.
I would just say we have it on video on my YouTube channel. You could see me, like, I was so surprised she walked in the door, and I just start, like, you could see me, I'm just crying and hugging her. But
Oh,
yeah,
you
I
didn't
was
know
so
she was
grateful.
coming?
We captured it. I had invited
Oh.
her, but I didn't know she was going to come. And then, you know, of course I had to ask her permission too. I was like, listen, at the beginning, I'm going to tell my grocery store story. Can I bring you up? And she's like, what's that story? I'm like, don't worry about it. You'll know. And can I bring you up? She's like, yeah. And so it just meant so much. And who knew she had 7 months to live? Like, I certainly didn't, you know, I don't think she did either. It was amazing.
And I mean, that story also goes to show that the universe really does have your back. Like, you were in a vulnerable position, you were young. It's not like you could have, you know, done something with your nervous system and regulation and like lean into subconscious, like whatever. You were just like, okay, this is what we need to do to survive. And the universe, God, source, whoever's up there was just like, don't worry, girl, I got you. And then it ended up happening and working out for you anyway. That's
Yeah,
that story, man.
I know.
God, that story. If you did nothing
yeah.
but tell that story for the rest of your career, I think you would still be like super wealthy.
I still cry every time. Like, it's been, I mean, I've been telling it for a decade, and I still cry because it's so moving. And I think, you know, I don't know if you've experienced this, Adriana, or if other people like have had this moment where we do tell our stories, right? Like, we all have stories to tell. We have these things, and sometimes we can forget how real they are. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to tell you a story, right? And I think what was so special about that was that having her with me on stages, it reminded me too, this really happened to
It's
me.
real. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I know that sounds weird to
Mhm.
say, but it really was like, Sarah Walton, you came from this moment, like this happened. And it was so powerful for me as a human to be humbled again, and to be reminded of how powerful it truly is when women have money. This is a real thing that I do. Yeah, it was God. It was amazing.
Look at the ripple effect from that one woman. She was like, I'm just going to pay for your dance costume.
Right.
And then look what happened,
I
like
know.
throughout the years. Like, that's insanity. That blows my mind.
I know.
And that actually, I was thinking about this before we hopped on. I've so often tried to think, what was like the one moment in our work together that shifted things? And you know, people tell me this, but it hasn't really clicked on till like lately. There wasn't one moment. There wasn't like a super magic bullet that just like shifted everything. It was all the tiny little moments that were just like compounding on to each other. And so even though it didn't feel magical in the moment, when I look back, I'm just like, holy shit. Like, holy shit. And even that just reminds me of like with your story, you know it's there and you know the ripple effect, but then when you're in it, you're not thinking about that until you look back. And I mean, that's why they say, wait, what is that? When you look back, it's like, what's that vision?
2020 vision.
Hell?
Yeah. When you look back, it's 2020 vision. Yes.
Yeah, like that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So you're moving through life, taking on all of this. You quit your job, you decide to go full force into like, it doesn't have to be this way. And so you really start unpacking abundance. Where do you believe that abundance truly comes from?
You know, that's interesting. It's really changed for me. It's already here all the time. And we unlearn that. And I really believe that's the truth. And anytime we question that, just think about, an orange tree doesn't struggle to create an orange. It just does. Right. We don't have to struggle for oxygen. It's naturally provided for us. The sun shines every single day. The wind blows when we need it to. Trees grow in such a way that they can withstand the wind. I mean, it's like, what? And our hearts beat every day. Our hair grows every day. It's like, it's always there. And what happens through this myopic humanity that we tend to live inside of is, I love this. This actually comes from The Illusion of Money, which is one of my favorite books by Kyle Cease. And he talks about the flow of abundance as like a huge waterfall, right? It's just constantly coming. And what we do is we go around the bend and we bring a cup and we get a little cup and then we go back around the bend and then we forget about the waterfall and we're like, oh crap, that's it. And I just love that analogy because I think that's very true. So it's here all the time. I mean, you and I are freaking talking in different cities in the United States in the middle of a heat wave. Like, what? How is that happening? Right? We've eaten today. We're both well fed. We both had family members who needed medical assistance lately, and we're fine. Like, what? What is that? And it's constantly here. And I think it's about coming home. I think abundance is really about wiping away the lies and the fear that this world, that the collective unconscious loves to stir and stoke. And that's why I hate those sales methods, because it's stoking that fear. You don't know how to do this. Only I know how to do this, but you have to pay me. It's like, what are you talking about? What is that? Right. And so instead it's this opening up to the truth. That to me is honestly what abundance is. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. And I was today years old when I realized what it really was about your work that meant so much to me, because within human design, I always talk about coming back home to yourself and letting go of what everything else has taught you. You're literally doing the same fucking thing with a different like modality.
I love it. Oh my God. No
so
wonder
funny.
we love each other so much. It's so true, right?
What the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. And so, okay. So I feel like I have like 500 things I could say right now. But so when I met you and you're talking about this, like wiping things away, clearing things, I mean, that was definitely part of my deconditioning, my process of coming back home to who I really am. So it just showed that working with you, not only holding me accountable, not just holding that space for me, but for you to gently remind me, hey, that waterfall's right there all the time. Like you were in my Voxer. I was messaging you like all the fucking time. I still want to message you like every day.
I love it.
And that was like that's why people need coaches or mentors or guides, because especially when you work in the online world and you're behind your laptop and you're like, does anybody hear me? Is anybody out there?
Yeah.
Who can I talk to about this today? Or even share a win? It can be so lonely. And to have someone who's in your corner who truly sees you, I 1,000% know that's why last year I just skyrocketed into like a new human, because you were right by my side for a full fucking year, which let's talk about that investment. Like, I know that there's going to be people listening who are just like, yeah, but that's a lot of money. I can't do this. I can't do that. I was just talking to, I recently started with a new physical therapist to heal through my shoulder stuff that I've been going through for a long time. Yes. And I walked away from what insurance was paying for because I found that I wasn't getting better. And I chose to pay out of pocket for this person. And him and I were in conversation last week. And he's like, well, I find that when people have some skin in the game of their own money, they're actually willing to put in the work. And that's what it is.
True. I think
that's 1,000%. Like when I invested with you, it's not the first time I invested with a coach, but it was the most money I'd invested. But also the support was so good. I mean, you were there all the time, not like 24/7, like she has a life, but you were there and like you were supporting me. And I was like, well, I gotta make money so I can pay her, like more money and more hands and more women, right? How do I get money in my hands so that I can pay her so that she can pay the next person, or just keep going? Yeah. And it lit a fire under my ass. But you were also constantly like, here's the waterfall. Here's the waterfall. Look at your gifts. Here's the waterfall. And I don't think any amount of money, I don't think you can really put a price tag on that at all.
Well, a couple of things I have to really acknowledge you too. So you guys, you have to know, like we were having chats when I was in airports. Like we were going back and forth over some really big, like she was moving some boulders out of her path. She was, and
Mm,
that is a big part of it too. I think that's what the skin in the game does, because you were like, I'm not willing to keep this boulder here. I can go around it. I'm not doing that
yep.
anymore. And you fought for you. And I think that's what that does. So I do want to acknowledge how much you brought to this as well, right? Because I can be the best freaking coach in the world. And if the person I'm coaching is like, I'm fine. Well, okay, I can't do much with that. But like, it's the honesty, it's the
Yeah.
vulnerability,
Yes.
it's the determination, it's the grit, it's the fire, all those things. And, and like you saw, I'll match it. I'll be there every time. I'll match you every time, but you've got to bring that to me. So I have something to work with. And you always did. And so I really want to
Thank you.
acknowledge that in you as well. But I do think I agree with you in that. I mean, I've hired coaches too, and I'm like, what the frick am I paying you for? Like, it is the worst feeling in the world. And it's one of my commitments in our business as well, is no one ever feels that way of like, nope, you call me, I'm there. You show up, I'm there. You drop me a message, you're getting
Yep.
one back. Right. And I think that is part of the my soul mission, but I think it's also part of the paradigm shift I'm trying to cause in the marketplace at large, right? That we have legitimate work to be doing together that can move mountains. And I can't do that if, someone the other day was like, you should charge $25,000 an hour. I'm like, are you out of your freaking mind? Like, what is wrong with people? Right. Like, and it was, of course, a guy. Right. And I don't mean to say it like that, but I was like, why would I do that to somebody?
Yes.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Maybe if it was a multimillionaire, that might actually match, right? Like $25,000 an hour might actually get their attention enough that they're invested, right? Sure.
Yep.
But on the whole, I'm talking about women who just left corporate. I'm talking about women who are raising children at the same time. We are talking about people who have a mission, they have a gift they want to share with the world. My job is to give them access to that and to create a barrier like that in the way. And we've all seen it. I have so many clients who come to me and they're like, I'm so scared to sign up with you. I've been so screwed over in the past or whatever, and I'm like, I'm so
Yep.
sorry. Because it's something that those of us who really love business and really love coaching, we're up against, or
Yep.
all the tactics and stuff out there. So I really
Yep.
appreciate you mentioning that, because I agree. I don't think there's an amount of money that we can spend to have these kind of mindset shifts. Like, it's so valuable. I hate that word right now, but like, I don't know what else to
Yeah.
call it, but it's almost hard to articulate. Yeah.
1000%. Yep.
Mhm.
Um, and I also realized as we were talking, as I'm looking at your body graph and you being a fifth line, I know you don't know much about what that means, but 5 lines are people who are very practical and really simplify things.
Mm.
And so you weren't just, I don't think you bring abundance forward in the sense of like, think happy thoughts, be positive. Like you were just like the stories you've already been sharing,
Mm.
practical, real, tangible stories. How do we make this simplified in everyday life? I could shoot you a message and be like, I'm struggling with this. And then you'd be like, yeah, but just, okay, look at it like this. And I'd be like, oh, you're right. Thank you. Like that was all I needed. And that's like the magic of that fifth line. You're definitely like
Mm.
problem solver, practicality. I love how you can take abundance and make it practical. Is there anything that pops up for you when I say making abundance practical? Do you automatically like think of something that you naturally do?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. What everybody's always told me. So I used to line up my stuffed animals when I was little and teach them stuff. God knows what I was teaching them, those poor animals, right? But I would line them up and teach them. And I remember people from a very young age would be like, you can explain anything. And I was like,
Yeah,
really? And it was just
that's
a
it.
thing that I always had. And then I was an English major in college. And I remember someone asking me why English. I said, because you know what? Teaches you how to break down anything so anyone can understand it, which means I will always be needed. I knew that at 18. I'm like, where the frick did that come from? That's not Sarah Walton. That was some sort of divine something or other got planted in my
Oh
brain.
my God.
But yeah, that was, because I was like, I need to be able to explain complex things. And in my career with the glass office that I ran away, where there's a Sarah-shaped hole in the wall, I was the go-between between business, right? Like, how do we make the business viable and profitable and do that, and tech. So I
Mm-hmm.
ran a tech team and a design team and the editors, and I had to report into really big business and have them understand each other, where business wanted something done. And I'd say, I got it. Not technically feasible. However, I'm going to put the team on a couple things that I think we can get through. And they'd be like, oh, I understand that. Okay. Whereas other VPs would walk out and they'd be like, what the heck are they talking about? And I don't mean that
Mm-hmm.
like, yay me. I think it's just something I got really lucky. And maybe it is that fifth line. but I
No,
get
it's just your design. That's just how you're designed. Yeah. And you were just naturally leaning into that for sure.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you to talk more about Abundance Academy. But first, I want to talk about why people could be afraid to even hear about Abundance Academy, because we hear money, we hear abundance, we think about making moves in that area and we freak out. Why do we freak out thinking about money, thinking about abundance, scarcity, all of that?
Oh God, that list is so
You're
long.
like, how much time do we have?
I know. I'm like 4.5 hour podcast. No, I mean, I think, it is the programming, right? And my favorite question to ask people, right? People are like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm freaking out. Is where did you learn that? And it gets rid of the noise and it snaps to, again, the practicality of it. Somebody taught you to be afraid. Somebody taught you to freak out. And if we look at the world, is it really that hard to figure out? Right? I mean, the average American is $50,000 in credit card debt. Average, right? So if that's you, don't freak out. That's where you are. And we have marketing to think for that, right? American Express, $100 million vacations, right? All these things people can't afford. Housing's like ridiculous right now, right? Of course. And then you hear all that. Oh, the economy's blah, blah, blah. You've been born into this conversation of madness. It's absolute madness. But somebody taught you to think that way. And they may not have sat you down and said, listen, I'm now going to instill fear into your brain. They didn't do that, right? But it was like, oh my God, we can't afford that. You maybe heard your parents fighting about it late at night. Maybe you grew up like me, where I knew damn well I could go to someone else's house and there were these things called Oreos. I was like, what is this magic, right? We didn't have that, right? These things are going on. Wealthy people are bad. Oh yeah, look at that big house, probably a scam artist, right? You hear this. And so then it's like, okay, I need to invest in me. It's like, why? You're never going to make enough. Right. And that, whoa, who taught me that? And so the invitation around the freak out is, where did you learn that? And that slows down the chatter enough that you can go, oh, when I was 7 and I was on the stairwell and I was listening to my parents fight about money. Oh my God. And now it's kind of like me, that moment in the office when I was like, I told myself I could never take care of myself and my family. I said that. When you can find that moment, and that's not blame, it's power, right? Sometimes people hear that, and in the new agey, like self-help world, they can be like, well, if you would just change your mindset, you'll weird up, right? It's like, no, we're not blaming.
I can't with that shit. Oh my God.
I hate that crap. It's like, oh, you have cancer? What do you think? It's like, are you kidding me? We all have bodies. Shit happens, right? Like, stop.
Yeah.
Stop it. Of course we can work on mindset. We know that stuff is powerful, but stop. So in those moments when you can figure out where that belief took root, where that took hold in you, you can go back and actually pull it out. That's real, right? I can work with that. We can all work with that. Like, we were all told something. I had one client, she's like, oh my God, this kid, 7th grade, he used to moo every time I walked by, right? Struggling with eating disorders her whole life.
Oh my God.
Right. But then forgot about that. I was like, oh my God. So a 12-year-old boy is running your relationship to you? It's all of a sudden gone, right? And not like magical, right? It will pop up, but all of a sudden the power's back where it belongs, which is in your own hands.
Right. And you have compassion for yourself a little bit more instead of shaming and judging.
Yep. And all that garbage goes away. Yeah. I mean, and it really is that powerful. I don't want to make it sound magical or like, we'll fix it in 20 minutes. But if you can start to really notice that stuff, then you can start to apply it. And that's when stuff starts cranking, because your actions change. And when your actions change, your results change every time, without exception. That can't happen, right? If you decide you're going to start saving money, you start saving money. Well, guess what? You have more money. Not magic, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, if we can get to the root of those ideas, of that freak out, we can start to move it. And then you can make a decision as an adult, not as a terrified child.
And not that I'm someone who is like, F the patriarchy. Like, I am a little bit, but I'm not like super. But I will say, when it comes to having fear about money, it really also is the society we've been raised in. We are taught as women, sit down, shut up. You're not the one to talk about the funds. You don't do investing, right? So we're moving through so much of our own shit, and so much of the shit from society and from our environment, even in the low key ways. Like this, I mean, it's not directly about finances, but someone my husband works with, when my husband was talking to him about this is too much travel, I've got a young family, like, you know, my wife's on her own all the time. The person he worked with was like, oh, just buy her some flowers. And he's like, yeah, that's not my no. And
Sarah
it's
Walton
like
biting tongue.
it's
Yeah.
those little, right? And that's not about financials, but it's those little tiny comments. It's those every single day from everywhere that we're fighting against. And once you start to recognize that's happening, you're
time.
just having that awareness.
Mhm.
Okay, now you can be like, oh, I don't need that. I'm gonna drop that, instead of actually soaking it into your energy. It's just, there's a lot we're up against. So we
Yeah.
need people like you.
You know, and then we need to tell the truth about it too, right? So it's really important that we don't brush it off, because it's another thing we were taught to do, right? It's like, I think Taylor Swift, actually, me and Taylor Swift, I've been quoting her a lot lately. Sorry, everyone. But like,
Lately, it's been like a year and a half.
I have issues. But yeah, I just, look, the woman broke an industry. Like, how do I not love her, right? By just being herself. Anyway, I digress. But there was a video of her once that actually she said on this topic I thought was so great, which is, as women, we've been taught to silently absorb the bad behavior of men. Men can do whatever they want, and we are supposed to silently absorb that. And what's happening now, as we're starting to actually respond to this bad behavior, is the response is treated as the offense, not the original behavior. And that hits so true for me, because I was born into such a patriarchal like culture, right? Women were not, I remember being told at 8 years old, it was selfish for a woman to work, that my job was to be a mother and wife and serve everybody. And that was it. And listen, if that's someone's belief, that's fine, but they should be able to choose that, not be taught that. Right. And I think in that moment, just hearing that from someone who's clearly had to go through stuff to get where she is, it was really powerful. But in the moment of what you said about just buy her flowers, that's another one where if you were to respond to that and be like, are you serious right now? It's like, God, would you relax, lady? And we've got to be aware of that. And again, I'm not trying to pick a fight or anything. I'm trying to just like sort of like make visible what's been invisible for a long time. We've just sort of gone through life as if this is the way we go through life. And I think we have an extraordinary opportunity right now to start to say, actually, what would be great is, actually, I handle all the money in the household. Actually, the average stay-at-home human right now, the person running the children around, whoever that is worth about $200,000 to the family every year. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of invisible work, right? So let's talk about that and let's make that visible. And so when I talk about things like this, I love men, right? I don't hate men, but the structures with which we operate in relation to each other, and especially around money, really needs to change. Like, that is a demand I have of this world right now. And the biggest source I have to that is helping women understand why they're afraid of money, or why they think they don't deserve it, or why they were taught only bad people have money. And just remembering it's not that long ago, we weren't supposed to handle money as women, right? We were passed.
Like the 70s, right? It was like the 60s or 70s, they could actually take a line of credit or something like that.
1976.
Insane.
I was
Oh
born.
my God.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, that's now, that's here, that's real. And we weren't supposed to touch it. You're just supposed to be handed from father to husband, right? Or father to brother. And that's no longer real, but we're operating. There's still part of our subconscious that operates as if it is. And so all I'm trying to do is make that visible to us so we can start to work through that. And we don't have to pretend there's some big bad or hate other people for it or anything like that, but to take that power back by talking about it.
That's it. Taking the power back.
Yeah.
But 1,000%. Okay. So I don't know if it's evolved since I started with you, but everyone probably listening is like, well, talk about this Abundance Academy. Like, what did Adriana actually do with you that helped her quantum leap? So what is your mission with Abundance Academy, and what space do you hold in there?
Oh, boy, that's a loaded question, but it is the abundance. So I've been working on money and business coaching, sales coaching for 15 years. Like, I've run this business now for 15 years, which I can't believe. But I was 18 months pregnant with my daughter when I launched it. So I always go by her age. I was like so pregnant. Anyway, so I launched the business and a baby at the same time. But yeah, so in those 15 years, I think I was always wanting to take people to The next level as a community and a way, I love one-on-one coaching so much. It's so powerful. And there was something about community that was missing for me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And so I started with the Sales Mastermind, which is a 6-month program where I literally teach the skill of sales with the lens of abundance. And what would happen is those 6 months would be up and people were like, not ready to go yet, please. And I'd be like, okay, hold on. And they were like, it just kept happening. And I was like, all right, we need a graduation from that, right? Like people were like, okay. And that's how the Abundance Academy was honestly formed, is like, okay, we've got skills down now. Now it's time to go into the Abundance Academy. And that's where you were one of those people. You're like, I got the skills. I need the academy. And that is the majority of the participants right now went straight into it. A couple of them came in through the Sales Mastermind and then wanted to do the Abundance Academy. So it is a year-long program where we literally rewire your brain around the experience of abundance. Now that happens with the lens on a business, right? So we're talking about your sales copy. What are you afraid to say? Okay, good. Where did you learn that? Right? So we go back into that. But then there's also things inevitably that come up. And so the space I hold is you're perfect as you are. You just forgot. So as we're going through all of this and you're watching over there, you're like, oh, but this Susie Jones is doing this on Instagram. I have to do that too, right? It's like, nope, go back to you. Go back to you. And that container of a year, I think, is so necessary. We actually have 4 people who are on year 2. They're like, nope, need more time, right? And when people first sign up, they're like, a year. And then I'm like, okay, it's your 11th month. They're like, what? No,
It goes by so
it goes so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, it just flies because we meet once a week, right? We really coach. We go like, we're actually meeting today in the Abundance Academy, and we're doing a mid-year review together, really going through what's working, what's not, why. Where are you fighting for scarcity? People hate that question, but it's like, oh, right there. That's where I'm fighting for it. Right. And it's so fun to play in there. And then I also love when people submit their work to me. So once a week, you can just submit whatever you want for me to review. It can be a negotiation letter. It can be a sales page. It can be email. It can be an internal plan about how you want to grow the business or your profit goals. And I love those reviews, but I think the sweet spot, I think I don't even know what to call it, but the ribbon that ties it all together in the Abundance Academy is the Voxer access, because I'm really like, I think that was really your experience, Susan. I'm with you. And I am going to fight for abundance when you don't see it. And I'm going to remind you of who you are when you can't find it. And I just think that's where the magic happens for people. You call it a quantum leap. We do 7x your business. Is that what it was? Was it 7?
I did last year. 7x. Yeah.
I can't even wrap my
head around that. This year, I'm like $2,000 away from all of last year, and it's only June. Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't even, hi, right? Like, that's what happens when you have a coach by your side who's fighting for your greatness. And I do think, back to what you're saying about coaches, just overall, I don't ever not have a coach myself, because there's something so cool about having someone whose only job is your fulfillment and success, right? They're not your mom, not your husband, not your sister, they're not your competitor, right? It's just one person, because if they don't help you grow and feel fulfilled, right, you're going to tell everybody that. And so it's like this really cool relationship where the goal is your happiness. I don't know. It doesn't get any better than that, I don't think.
It's so true. More and more lately, I've been hearing my clients say to me things like, this happened and it sucks, but because of the tools you gave me and because I could just Vox you right away, I managed just fine. And like, they're saying it as this, like, I'm so proud of myself. And then, but that's also feedback for me of like, holy shit, like people are picking up what I'm putting down and they're implementing it and it's working. And that's just amazing. It's an amazing feeling.
It's the best, I think, yeah. Because you're living your gift. I mean, what else is there to do on this planet but to live our gift and help other people? And I mean, you're doing it. It's so great. So great.
Yeah, it's right back at you. Is there anything else that's on your mind that you wanted to share?
I feel like on planet Earth right now, a lot of people are struggling. I don't know if it's part of the collective unconscious, but this feeling of kind of being stuck or in a little bit of a standstill is kind of the feeling I'm getting, just ear to the ground. And if you're going through that, it doesn't have to stay that way. And that doesn't mean hustle. Please don't hustle. Oh, dear God. That does not mean stay up till midnight. That does not mean
busyness to numb. Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
That just means like that book you've been thinking about reading, go read it. That podcast you thought about listening to, go listen to it again. And one of the things we can do in those moments where it just feels kind of stagnant, which I think is so dangerous, right? That's when water turns nasty. That's when mosquitoes start, like when stuff's stagnant, things
Right.
are not good, right? We want to jump back into the flow to have things be healthy and moving. Is to ask yourself what's worked in the past, what's really worked in the past, and do that again. Whatever that was, just do that again with a full heart and without massive expectations, but just to bring you back home.
I totally second that. I was just saying something like that to someone the other day. She was having a chart reading and talking about how, she's losing sight of why she started her business and things are feeling stagnant. And I was like, you know what I do when it feels like that? I give away a chart reading and I just go do it for free. And then things just like open up or do like literally anything of my tools. I just give. And it's that law of reciprocity, but it also just creates that fire and that creativity spark within you all over again. I 1000% second that.
Yeah.
Where can people connect with you?
Well, you can find me on sarahwalton.com. We try to keep it easy. We have a YouTube channel where I do Coffee with Coach and Sarah Uncut, where I just give small tips and have lots of fun. And then I have a podcast too, where famous Adriana has appeared. It's the Gay Mom Girlfriend podcast. So you can find me there as well. And I'm on Instagram too.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Oh, one other question. Have you hit $1 million yet?
We're so close. How did you know that?
Oh,
like I literally was like, oh my God, you guys are about to be able to take a picture. I was like, oh my God. Literally, I was thinking that last night as I fell asleep. How did you know that? Yeah.
I don't know.
I was like with my team, I'm like, you guys were so and close. Oh my God. Yeah. Super excited.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you tell me when you do so we can celebrate?
I will. Please. Yes. Are you kidding? When I pick myself up off the floor and stop fainting, right? Yes, I will absolutely do that. It's going to be such a joy because that means there's that many women who were affected. It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. 1000%. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I really had a great time.
Stop recording in like 12 places. There we go.